Hello, this is a presentation called Creative Commons, a history of the organization, the licenses, and the movement. Talking about creative licenses, this is actually a Creative Commons license on this particular presentation. My name is Sherry Jones. I am a philosophies and game studies subject matter expert and instructor at Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design. I am an advocate for open educational resources, and I've been using Creative Commons licenses to license all of my educational works since 2013. I believe that Creative Commons is very important to advancing knowledge in education, particularly on a global scale. So let's start this presentation by offering a definition of what Creative Commons is and also what kind of problems is Creative Commons licenses designed to solve. So Creative Commons came after copyright laws naturally. So let's discuss a little bit about what copyright laws are. So copyright laws are designed to protect the expressions of an idea. So an expression refer to, for example, things such as books, right? Books expresses ideas of the author, comic books, photographs, images, artworks, movies, short film, and so forth, or even video games, right? These are expressions of an idea. So copyright laws do not protect an idea because how can you possibly protect an idea? Everyone has ideas, right? But an expression of ideas is different. So an expression could come in many different forms. So the laws are designed to protect the expression idea so that the creator of that expression of idea, the artwork, can actually make copies of that work and also profit of that work. Now, specifically, the owner of that creative work has the exclusive right to make copies of that work for a limited time. So this means that no one other than the owner of the copyrighted material can make duplicates of the copyrighted creative work. Now, if that person really wants to do so, then that person must seek the explicit permission of the copyright owner. Otherwise, without the permission, it would be illegal to do so. So again, the purpose of establishing copyright laws is to protect the creator's ability to profit off of her work if she chooses to do so, right? If she decides that she wants to make a profit of her work. So there are some problems with existing copyright laws. First of all, copyright laws have long existed before the advent of internet and social media. The internet and social media and other technological advances has allowed the sharing of expressions of ideas much more easily, right? And those people, your friends, family, neighbors who are creating expressions of ideas on the internet are not necessarily thinking about profiting off their expressions of ideas, but the idea is that they would like to share the materials for the sake of building communities with others, right? So the example I offer here are memes. So many people create memes, they enjoy making memes, and they enjoy sharing memes on platforms such as Facebook or Twitter for the purpose of, for example, a laugh or making their communities happy or sharing an idea with others, right? Through their images, through their photograph, as a way of communication. The people who are making memes are definitely not thinking about making a profit of that particular meme because everyone on the internet can make memes. It's too easy to make one. But for them, it's very important to have the ability to share that. Now, existing copyright law doesn't really allow someone to share materials online or understand what their rights are. Another problem is that copyright laws vary from country to country because naturally each country create their own laws on what copyright materials are, okay, what falls under copyright. So therefore, if, for example, I own a textbook, I created a textbook in the United States, I have a particular copyright on my textbook. When that textbook is shared overseas, let's say it goes to Australia, it goes to New Zealand, it goes to Japan, and so forth. My copyright in the U.S. will not apply to Japan, to Australia, to New Zealand. Each country has their own copyright, so I have very little control over how my work is used or who can duplicate my work, especially when it's out of my own country. So Creative Commons licenses were designed as a solution to deal with exactly that, which is to give the creator control over how to give access to their own work on a global scale. So no matter what country someone's in, no matter where they're going to take this material, the Creative Commons license would tell the user exactly how a particular work should be used, how the user must attribute or not attribute the owner of the material, and also if the user is allowed to produce versions, right, derivatives of the work based on inspiration, right, inspiration of the original work. Creative Commons licenses allow us to do so. So with a very brief definition of what Creative Commons are, let's discuss a lawsuit that actually launched the whole enterprise of Creative Commons. Without this lawsuit, Creative Commons probably would have never existed. The lawsuit was specifically, let's talk about the law first, right? There's a particular act created in 1998 called the U.S. Sonny Bono Copyright Term Extension Act. So what exactly is this Extension Act? So let's discuss a little bit about what U.S. copyright law did prior to 1998. So prior to 1998, the U.S. copyright laws give the copyright owner the right to a creative work over the course of the owner's lifetime plus 50 years. That means the owner, however long the owner is going to live, let's say the owner lives for 80 years, okay? Their work, the creative work that belongs to them, will stay accredited to them with the same copyright rights for another 50 years. So 80 plus 50. That's what the US copyright law says, is that even if someone passes on, there's also an additional 50 years of protecting that work so that the work cannot be used by the public for whatever reason. Okay, so in 1998, a particular act called the Sonny Bono Copyright Term Extension Act, which abbreviated, it's called CTEA, adds an additional 20 years of extension to every work in the United States. So this means that instead of 50 years, now there is 70 years. So that means however long the owner is going to live, an additional 70 years is added onto their lifespan to extend the copyright of the copyrighted material. Now, one might say, what exactly is the big deal? What's the difference between 20 years or 10 years or 50 years, right? It's just years added. Now, Harvard Law professor Lawrence Lessig finds CTEA unconstitutional. That is because he believes that this particular act will prevent creative works from entering into the public domain. So let's pause for a moment and discuss what exactly is public domain. Public domain is a legal term that refers to works that are released to the public for free access. That means when the work has entered into the public domain, the author would not be expecting attribution. The author often has passed on. The publisher of the material or the owner of the material can no longer expect anyone to attribute the work to the owner, okay, because it's released to the public. The public is allowed to access the material at any time, And the public is allowed to create derivatives, versions of that work based on inspiration from that work. So it's freely used by the public. Now, why is public domain so very, very important? Public domain promotes education. If one wants to learn something and the material is freely accessible on the internet, one can learn from reading the material on the internet. That's the beauty of public domain. So, for example, I'm a philosopher. I teach philosophy. If I want to read material from Immanuel Kant, right, the philosopher Kant, I can go to the internet and find the original text by Kant. Most of them are readily available for anyone to read. One does not have to pay hundreds of dollars per book to read them. That's the beauty of public domain. Public domain promotes the flowering and sharing of creative ideas through the expressions of those ideas, right? So Eldridge, oh, and I did forget to mention, sorry. So the image on the left, the man on the left, that is Eldred, okay, Eric Eldred. He's the publisher, okay? And this publisher specifically published works in the public domain to promote education. On the right is actually William Ashcroft. So this is actually the lawsuit that occurred due to a response to the unconstitutionality, right, of this particular act. Eldred hired Liesig to be his representative, to be his lawyer to argue this particular case. So during this case, Liesig offered three main arguments against CTEA. So first, he argues that CTA violates the Constitution copyright clause. This particular clause basically suggests that Congress should promote advancements of the sciences and arts in a limited time frame. So it's actually Congress's job to promote the advancement of science and art. Okay, so the CTEA Act would allow applications of retroactive extensions that creators could have copyright protection for an unlimited time. So that means if the law was passed in 1998, right, the creator can actually apply this extension to work that was published in previous year, or 20 years ago and so forth. That's what retroactive means. So this is a problem because what that suggests is that an owner can apply this extension to any work forever, because then they'll always say, well, now this retroactive that was made last year, I'm going to add another 20 years and so forth and so forth and so forth. So Liesig obviously saw a loophole based on this law, and he thinks because of that, it's unconstitutional because it will make all copyrighted materials basically perpetually, in perpetuity, always protected under copyright law. So the second argument he made is that CTA may infringe upon freedom of speech by giving copyright owners the ability to block others from accessing, using, or making derivatives of a creative work in an unlimited time frame. So imagine if copyright is unlimited, naturally, the rest of us will never be able to access great educational textbooks, even works from Shakespeare, as you can imagine, or Chaucer. Imagine that all that is gone because someone can make copyright claims and also extend the copyright of those particular work forever, retroactively, right? So we will never get anything in public domain. And specifically, well, how does this relate to freedom of speech? Any expression of an idea is basically speech, okay? So artwork is speech. Film is speech. A book is speech, right? So restriction of expression, so restriction of any kind of artwork, any kind of product that was created to express an idea may be an infringement of freedom of speech itself. The third argument that Liesig offered is that CTEA violates the doctrine of public trust. So the doctrine of public trust basically requires the government to transfer public property to private entities in consideration of public benefit. So that means Whenever the government decides to transfer public property to private entity, they must question whether or not this particular transfer is done for the sake of public benefit. Because if it isn't, let's say for an example, this particular public property, just imagine with me for a second that the government decided to transfer the whole collective work of Shakespeare to a private publisher. Okay, so they decided to do so. They just transmitted this material. The publisher can decide to block anyone from reading a single page from the collected works of Shakespeare because now they own the copyright to that material. So that would be against this particular act, transferring the collection of Shakespeare to this private publisher would be against the public benefit. Public benefit means that the public should be able to access this material, and now they can't. Okay. So, with all these great arguments that Lisek offered, unfortunately, Lisek and Eldred lost the case. Okay. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court and it was also shut down at the Supreme Court. Although the case didn't go the way that Lisek would hope it would go, it actually inspired him as well as his other activists to create Creative Commons. So let's discuss from the lawsuit, let's discuss the formation of Creative Commons. So there are three perspectives that we need to see Creative Commons as. First, we need to look at Creative Commons as an organization. Second is we need to look at the set of licenses that were created by Creative Commons. And also lastly, we need to think of it as a movement, okay? So although we do have copyright laws, many people, many citizens do not know how to exercise their right so that they can give people the right to their materials, to give people the ability to access their work, to share, right, without getting people into trouble. So Lisek and other activists formed a nonprofit organization called Creative Commons. And in 2012, they created this set of Creative Commons licenses so that creators of any kind of creator can have the ability to exercise their copyright by appending the license to any of their particular work. So if, for example, someone might have created a statue, right? And they can actually add the Creative Commons license to that statue um, on the side, saying that this particular statue is a Creative Commons work. Viewers probably are allowed to look at that work without having to pay the owner anything to view the statue. And if the owner of the statue is even more lenient, they could say, hey, you can create derivatives, which is versions of my statue, because I want you to show me something creative, something fun. We want to continue the art of creating sculptures. Then someone else can come along and do that because the owner of the statue, the owner of the sculpture, actually told people how his artwork can be used. Okay, so Creative Commons organization now in 2021 is trying to promote better sharing of creative works by providing technical, legal, and policy supports to governments, institutions, individual communities. Okay, for the sake of knowledge sharing and public interest. That means that CC organization now actually will offer technical help, legal help, and policy help to any organization or any governments that are trying to figure out how to implement Creative Commons on a wider scale. And I think for long run, it's a very smart strategy because for people to adopt Creative Commons en masse, the government must also understand how Creative Commons work. So the collaboration between CC organization and government is a really positive step to wider adoption of CC work. And on the Creative Commons organization site, they list that they have 3 strategic goals going forward. So first, they're doing advocacy for Creative Commons. Second is they're looking for innovation. Innovation in terms of how to create a commons, innovation in terms of new technologies to support Creative Commons, and capacity building, which is the capacity of expanding Creative Commons to other areas to document other cultural heritages. So here is a screenshot of the Creative Commons licenses. So currently there are 6 Creative Commons licenses. So the most open of the 6 licenses is the one on the top left-hand corner. Okay, so it's a CC and there's a little man and underneath it says BY. So that particular license is called CC BY SA. So CC stands for Creative License and SA means share alike. So if you put this particular license on your work, basically you're telling someone, please, if you're going to use my work, please give credit to me, attribute my work to me, please. Okay. And second, if you're going to use my work and put it on your site or something, or make a derivatives, which is another version of my work, you are required, based on this license, to share your work to other people. So you may not block people from accessing your artwork if your artwork is built based on my artwork, based on my creation. Okay. The most restricted out of the 6, without going over all of them, is the one on the bottom right corner. And that one is CC, BY, NC, and D. So once again, CC stands for Creative Commons. And then NC is no, oh gosh, I'm not thinking of it right now. No commercial, non-commercial, sorry. So non-commercial means that companies are not allowed to use the material. Okay. So sometimes if the artist is not making money off that work, they don't think that it's right for commercial companies to make money off their work either. So sometimes they will put the NC there. And D stands for no derivatives. That means you may use my work, you may look at it, but you may not make another version of my work or copy my work in any way, shape, or form. Okay. So that is the most restricted out of the 6. So with Creative Commons licenses discussed, let's discuss Creative Commons as a movement for share culture, or share culture as a movement. Okay. So CC advocates want to use CC licenses to create a movement by which creators can exercise their copyright and control how their works are used and share their works across the globe without being restricted by the laws in respective countries. So in this sense, it is a promotion of open knowledge, open education, open sharing, open access of all kind, right? It's access and control. The idea is that we want, right, the CC advocates want to help people to share their work worldwide without worrying about the copyright laws of their respective countries or whatever the country is. And it's a beautiful way for people to exchange materials without being fearful that they might have broken the law by what they've shared. Specifically a share culture, a culture in which sharing is the dominant way of life, right, can be formed through CC licenses. Virtual communities can be formed through the exchanges and derivatives of expressions. So an example of this is World of Warcraft, a video game. That community has created lots of metagame materials. So for example, they have created maps on how to finish levels. They have created guides on how to get certain weapons or level up certain weapons. They have created maps of certain landscapes so player wouldn't get lost while they're playing the game. And honestly, those are expressions of ideas. And people who created those materials are willingly doing it without expecting compensation because they care about helping other people succeed. So the movement actually has a name now, right? So CC Global Network, which stands for, which the abbreviation is CCGN, was formed in 2001 and has now 600 members across 40 chapters throughout the world. That is very impressive. This particular global network is trying to promote the open movement, right? That's the whole goal of CC Global Network. So CCGN offers these network platforms. So each of these platforms enable collaborations on projects. So many people can gather in these platforms for the sake of creating certain kind of open movement projects. So the three dominant ones are open education platform. So that means thinking about how to promote knowledge, how to promote education across borders, open education platform. Copyright platform is thinking about creating policies around or based on the copyright law of each country. So that is the copyright platform. An open GLAM platform is about how to use Creative Commons to document more cultural heritages. So those are three dominant examples of volunteers working together to create open movement projects. Now, below, if you are interested in figuring out if there's a chapter near your area, you can contact network-support at creativecommons.org to find out if there's a chapter near you. So, what exactly is the reach of Creative Commons? I mean, how many people actually are using Creative Commons licenses or adhering to Creative Commons? So on Creative Commons website, they offer a series of tools. One of the tools is to create your own license that you can add to websites, to artworks, to your own materials, to basically state what you want your work, how you want your work to be used. And people who are using it includes educators, researchers, filmmakers, artists, and so forth. Okay? And what's very impressive is that more than 2 billion works across 9 million websites currently use Creative Commons licenses. That is a very impressive number. I'm sure there's more work that can be Creative Commons licensed, but it has grown massively. So that was the end of my presentation. Thank you for looking through all that. I mean, that was kind of, some of it was kind of heavy, but if you want access to the slides link is bit.ly/CC History 2021. Again, it's bit.ly/C History 2021. If you're interested in reading more about the history of Creative Commons, I recommend the following 3 articles. Okay, the first one is an image, but it leads you to a site created by Penn State University that discusses why the Eldred Ashcroft lawsuit was so important to U.S. history. The second one is an article that I've written specifically about how to solve faculty's resistance to creating OERs. You might find that article interesting. The third article is from Kaplan. And that particular article, although it's old because it was published in 1999, actually details Leisig's arguments against CTEA. So I recommend looking through these materials to better understand the Creative Commons history. So thank you for listening.